The gunshot cracked through the afternoon heat like a bullwhip. Not a killing shot, just Jed Hawkins drunk on cheap whiskey, firing his Remington into the Arizona sky to draw a crowd. It worked. Men drifted toward the trading post yard, boots scraping through dust, tobacco juice staining the hard-packed earth. They weren't there for business. They were there for entertainment. And Jed Hawkins was about to give them a show. He dragged a woman into the center of the yard by a rope looped around her wrists. An Apache woman, young, maybe 24, with long black hair, matted with dirt and blood. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, revealing bruises that told a story of fists and boots and days without mercy. But her eyes told a different story: defiance, fury, a fire that no amount of beating had managed to extinguish. Hawkins yanked the rope hard and she stumbled forward, knees hitting the ground. She didn't cry out, didn't beg, just pushed herself back up, slow and deliberate, like a wounded wolf that refuses to stay down. $2, Hawkins shouted, his voice raw from whiskey. Two goddamn dollars for this Apache squaw. She's young, she's strong, she'll cook clean hall water, do whatever a man needs. The crowd laughed. Someone spat tobacco juice near her bare feet. An old rancher shook his head and walked away, muttering about trouble he didn't need. Nobody stepped forward. At the edge of the yard, half hidden in the shadow of the general store's overhang, a man watched. Samuel Brennan, 38 years old, former Union scout, sharpshooter, survivor of Shiloh, and a dozen battles that left scars on his body and deeper ones in his soul. He'd come to Dusty Creek for flour coffee and new shoes for his horse. He hadn't planned on buying anything else. But then his eyes caught something that made his blood freeze solid in his veins. A tattoo on Hawkins' wrist, barely visible beneath the grime and sweat-stained sleeve. A coiled rattlesnake with its mouth open, fangs bared. The mark of the Cass gang. Sam's hand drifted to his belt fingers, brushing the worn walnut grip of his Colt 45. His mind traveled back through years of blood and loss. To a cornfield at Antietam, where his father fell with a Confederate blade in his chest. To a burning homestead at Miller Creek, where his wife Mary and his son Thomas screamed their last breaths while flames consumed everything he'd built. All because of one man, Virgil Cass. Sam had been hunting him for 3 years, killed 2 of his men in separate encounters. But Cass himself always slipped away, vanishing into the canyons and badlands like smoke through fingers. Now here was one of Cass's men standing in broad daylight, wearing that snake tattoo like a badge of honor. And this Apache woman might know where the gang's hideout was. Sam stepped out of the shadows. The crowd parted without a word. Something about the way he walked, slow and deliberate, his right hand hanging loose near his holster, made men step aside. They recognized danger when they saw it. Hawkins looked up, grinning like he'd finally found a buyer. Sam reached into his pocket. $2 silver, the last of his money. Coins he'd been saving for nails and lamp oil. Everything he had left in the world that wasn't strapped to his hip or tied to his saddle. He dropped them into Hawkins' filthy palm. The metal clinked heavy in the sudden silence. "Well now," Hawkins said, "that's more like it. She's all yours, friend." Sam drew his Bowie knife. The Apache woman flinched, her body tensing for the blow she expected. Every muscle coiled tight, ready to absorb pain. Instead, Sam lowered the blade to the rope at her wrists and cut it clean. The rope fell away, leaving red welts on her skin where the rough fibers had bitten deep. She stared at him, dark eyes searching his face, waiting for the catch. Waiting for the demand that always came from men who bought women like livestock. Sam slid the knife back into its sheath. Then he leaned in close to Hawkins and spoke loud enough for every man in that yard to hear. "Tell Virgil Cass that Sam Brennan is still alive, and I want my father's ring back." The color drained from Hawkins' face like water from a cracked barrel. You're supposed to be dead. Cass said he burned you out at Miller Creek with the rest of them. He burned my home, killed my family. Sam's voice was cold as mountain ice. But I wasn't there that night. I've been tracking him ever since. And now I've found his trail again. Hawkins stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own boots. Everyone in the Arizona Territory knew the name Sam Brennan, the Union scout who'd hunted down Confederate raiders after the war ended, the ghost who'd sworn vengeance on the Cass gang and picked them off one by one, the man who wouldn't stop until Virgil Cass was dead. Sam turned to the Apache woman. "Can you ride?" She nodded once, sharp and certain. "Then let's go." They rode north for 2 hours before she spoke. The trail wound through scrubland and scattered cottonwoods, the afternoon sun beating down on their backs like a blacksmith's hammer. Sam led his gelding at an easy pace, the woman mounted on his pack mule, her bound wrists now free but her posture still rigid with caution. "What do you want from me?" Her English was clear, educated almost. That surprised him. Most Apache he'd encountered spoke only fragments learned from traders and missionaries. This woman spoke like someone who'd been taught properly. Sam didn't turn around. "Information. Where's Cass's hideout?" "Why should I tell you anything?" "Because I just spent the last money I had buying your freedom, and because Virgil Cass destroyed everything I ever loved. I've got nothing left but the hunt." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the creak of leather and the steady clop of hooves on hard-packed earth. "Then I don't know the exact location. They blindfolded me when they moved camps. But I know they'll come looking for me." Now Sam turned in his saddle. "Why?" "Because I killed one of them when I escaped." His eyebrows rose. "How?" "Knife through the throat while he slept." For the first time in 3 years, Sam felt something close to respect for a stranger. He studied her face, the sharp cheekbones, the defiant set of her jaw, the intelligence burning in her dark eyes. This was no helpless victim. This was a survivor. "What's your name?" "Ayanna." "I'm Sam. We've got a long ride ahead. Save your strength." They reached the cabin at sunset. It sat against a low ridge where cottonwoods grew thick, their leaves whispering in the evening breeze. A simple structure of pine logs chinked with mud, one room, a roof shingled tight against the rain. A small corral held 2 lean cows and an old draft horse named Dusty, who'd carried Sam through more miles than he could count. Inside, Sam lit the stove and set water to boil. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and cold coffee, the scent of a man living alone for too long. He pulled a Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver from a chest in the corner, checked the cylinder, and held it out to Ayanna, grip first. "You know how to use this?" She took the weapon without hesitation, checked the chambers, spun the cylinder with a practiced flick of her wrist, sighted down the barrel at a knot in the far wall. Every motion spoke of training. "My father taught me, before the soldiers killed him." "Your father was a warrior, a chief. He led our people for 20 winters." Her voice carried no self-pity, only the weight of fact. "When the cavalry came, he stayed behind so the women and children could escape through the canyon. I heard the gunshots from a mile away, counted them until they stopped." Sam nodded slowly. He understood that kind of loss, the kind that hollowed you out and left nothing but purpose. "Cass took something from me too, something I can never get back." Their eyes met across the dim cabin. Two people forged by loss, tempered by grief, hardened by a world that took everything and gave nothing in return. "You're not rescuing me," Ayanna said. It wasn't a question. "No, I'm using you as bait to draw Cass out of hiding." She should have been angry, should have cursed him or demanded he return her to her people. Instead, a ghost of a smile crossed her face. Just a flicker there and gone, but it transformed her features entirely. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." The next 3 days fell into a rhythm of preparation. Sam taught Ayanna the terrain around the cabin, every rock formation that could provide cover, every sight line that could be exploited, every escape route through the brush if things went bad. She learned fast, faster than most men Sam had trained during the war. In return, she shared what she knew about the Cass gang. 6 men, maybe more with new recruits, well armed with repeating rifles and plenty of ammunition, well mounted on stolen cavalry horses, completely without mercy. On the third night, Ayanna asked the question that had been waiting between them. The ring you mentioned, where did Cass get it? Sam's hands paused on the Winchester 66 he was cleaning. The firelight played across his face, deepening the scar that ran from cheekbone to jaw. My father was a first lieutenant in the Union Army. Good man, fair officer. His men would have followed him anywhere. Sam ran the cleaning rod through the rifle barrel, his movements mechanical. Virgil Cass was a Confederate sergeant at Antietam, September 17, 1862. Bloodiest day of the whole damn war. He set down the rod and stared into the fire. They met in a cornfield, hand to hand after both ran out of ammunition. My father was wounded, bleeding from a minie ball in his thigh. Cass killed him with a bayonet. Then he pulled the silver ring off my father's finger while he was still dying. How do you know this? A private from my father's company survived, hid under the bodies until nightfall. He told me everything years later when I tracked him down in Ohio. Sam's jaw hardened to granite. He said Cass laughed while he did it. Laughed and said the ring was payment for 4 years of Yankee aggression. Ayanna was silent, letting him continue. After the war, I tracked Cass to a saloon in Kansas, confronted him, demanded the ring back in satisfaction for my father's murder. Sam's voice went flat, empty of emotion. He laughed in my face, said he remembered my father's face when the light left his eyes, said the ring was his now spoils of war. What happened? I called him out. We drew. I was faster, put a bullet through his shoulder before his gun cleared leather. Sam shook his head slowly. But his men were waiting outside, 6 of them. They ambushed me when I walked out the door, beat me half to death and left me bleeding in the street. Figured I'd die before morning. But you survived. Took me 3 months to heal. By the time I could ride again, Cass had vanished into the Badlands. Sam looked up, meeting Ayanna's eyes. A year later, he came looking for me. But I was away tracking a lead in New Mexico. He found my wife, Mary, and my son, Thomas, at our homestead instead. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled at the rising moon. He burned them out, killed everyone. Mary, Thomas, 2 ranch hands who tried to fight back. Then he carved a message into the barn door before he rode away. What message? Now we're even Brennan. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but certain. So he took your father, then your family, all because you wounded his pride. The ring is just a symbol now. What I want is justice. Sam picked up the Winchester and resumed cleaning. And I'm going to take it out of his hide, 1 piece at a time. On the 4th night they came. Ayanna heard them first. Her ears, trained by years of survival in the wilderness, caught the distant rhythm of hoofbeats long before Sam could. 3 riders, coming from the west, moving slow, trying to stay quiet. Sam was already on his feet, dousing the lamp, reaching for his rifle. He'd slept in his boots for 3 nights straight, waiting for exactly this moment. Get to the rain barrel. Wait for my first shot. Don't fire until you have a clear target. Ayanna took her position without argument, crouching in the shadows behind the heavy wooden barrel, her Smith & Wesson steady in both hands. Sam climbed through the back window and pulled himself onto the roof. The shingles were rough against his chest as he low-crawled into position. The Winchester felt like an extension of his own body, familiar and deadly. The riders emerged from the tree line. 3 men. Rough clothes, hard faces, pistols at their hips, and rifles in saddle scabbards. They spread out as they approached, covering all angles. Professional, careful, but not careful enough. The lead rider dismounted and drew his pistol. He nodded to the others, then crept toward the cabin door. Sam settled the Winchester stock against his shoulder, took a breath, let it out halfway. The raider kicked the door in. Sam fired. The Winchester kicked hard, the 44-40 round punching through flesh and bone. The man spun sideways, hit the doorframe, and crumpled to the dirt. The second raider wheeled toward the roof, bringing up his rifle. But Ayanna was already rising from behind the rain barrel. She fired twice, rapid and controlled. Both shots found their mark. The man screamed, clutching his thigh, his rifle clattering away into the darkness. The third raider spurred his horse toward the trail, fleeing into the night. Sam let him go. One survivor to carry the message back to Cass. He dropped from the roof, landing in a crouch rifle still ready. The wounded men lay in the dirt, cursing and groaning. Sam walked to the one with the chest wound and pressed his boot down hard. "Where's Virgil, Cass?" The raider spat blood, his eyes already glazing. "Go to hell, Brennan." Sam drew his Colt and pressed the barrel against the man's forehead. "Last chance. Talk and I'll make it quick. Stay quiet and I'll let you bleed out slow." "You're dead anyway." The raider managed a bloody grin. "Even if you kill Virgil, his brother Marcus will hunt you to the ends of the earth. That man's worse than the devil himself." Sam pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across the valley, and then there was silence. He filed the name away. Marcus Cass. Something to deal with later if he survived the next few days. Ayanna stood over the second wounded raider, her revolver aimed at his face. He was younger than the first, maybe 20, his eyes wide with terror and pain. "I'll talk," he gasped. "I'll tell you everything. Just don't let her kill me. Please." Sam crouched beside him. "Start talking." The story came out in pieces, interrupted by whimpers of pain and desperate glances at Ayanna's unwavering gun. Cass had a hideout in Red Canyon, 2 days' ride north. 6 men, maybe more now. And in 5 days they were meeting a group of Mexican traders. Not for horses or cattle, for people. 12 captives, women and children, taken from settlements and Apache villages over the past month. Cass was going to sell them across the border where questions weren't asked and money talked louder than conscience. Sam's blood went cold. 12 innocent lives, 5 days until they disappeared forever. He looked at Ayanna. Her face had gone still as carved stone, but something cold and lethal flickered in her gaze. "Some of them might be from my tribe," she said quietly. Sam nodded. "I know." He stood looking down at the wounded raider. "You're going to tell your friend who ran that Sam Brennan is coming. And this time, I'm not stopping until every last one of you is dead or in chains." Then he brought the rifle butt down hard, and the young raider knew nothing more. They rode out before dawn, pushing hard through the darkness. Sam led the way, reading the stars the way his father had taught him when he was a boy, navigating by constellations that had guided Brennan men for 3 generations. Ayanna rode beside him, her injuries forgotten in the urgency of the mission. By sunset the following day, they were crouched on a ridge overlooking Red Canyon. Sam counted the enemy through his spyglass. His stomach dropped. Not 6 men. 10. 2 sentries on the ridge above. 2 more at the canyon mouth. 6 inside the camp, moving between tents. In a central cook fire, their weapons always within reach. 10 armed killers. 2 of them. "We can't fight through 10 men," Ayanna said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam knew she was right. A frontal assault would be suicide, even with surprise on their side. The numbers were impossible, the terrain favored the defenders. He scanned the canyon floor, looking for any advantage. "There!" Ayanna pointed to a cave mouth at the back of the canyon. Flickering firelight showed through the entrance, casting dancing shadows on the rock walls. "That's where they're keeping the captives. I was held there for 3 days before I escaped. Guarded from outside, but only 2 men at a time." Sam studied the layout, his mind running through possibilities and discarding them one by one. Ayanna spoke before he could. "Let them capture me." Sam turned sharply. "What?" "I let them take me back. They'll put me with the other prisoners. Once I'm inside, I cut everyone loose and wait for your signal." She met his eyes without flinching. You attack at dawn when the sun is in their eyes. We hit them from both sides. They'll kill you the moment they recognize you. No, I'm worth money to them. A bitter smile crossed her face. And they'll want to make an example of me first. Punishment for killing one of their men. That buys us time. Sam shook his head. Too risky. There has to be another way. Do you have one can two guns fight through 10 men on ground? They know better than us? Silence stretched between them. He had no counter-argument. My father used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear, Ayanna said softly. It's deciding that something else is more important. Those people in that cave are more important than my fear. Sam looked at her for a long moment. At the determination in her eyes, the set of her jaw, the warrior spirit that no amount of brutality had managed to break. He reached into his boot and pulled out a small knife, the blade no longer than his finger, wickedly sharp. My father gave me this before I shipped out to Shiloh. Saved my life twice. He pressed it into her palm. Hide it in your boot. If everything goes wrong, use it. Ayanna took the knife. I know how to use it. I know you do. She rose to leave, then paused. She extended her hand, not for a handshake, for a warrior's grip, forearm to forearm. Sam took it. Her grip was iron. Partners, she said. Partners. Then she turned and walked down the ridge toward the canyon, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Sam watched until he couldn't see her anymore. Then he began preparing for the fight of his life. They caught her within the hour. Sam watched from the ridge as torches flared and raiders dragged Ayanna into camp. Shouts echoed off the canyon walls. Men gathered around her like wolves around wounded prey. A tall figure emerged from the largest tent, Virgil Cass. Even from 200 yards, Sam recognized him. Tall and broad-shouldered, a face scarred by violence and years of brutal living. He moved with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never met anyone he couldn't kill, buy, or break. And on his right hand, catching the torchlight, a silver ring gleamed. His father's ring. Cass grabbed Ayanna by the hair, jerking her head back. Sam couldn't hear the words, but he could imagine them. Threats, promises of pain, the ugly pleasure of a cruel man with absolute power over the helpless. Then Cass shoved her toward the cave, and 2 guards dragged her inside. She was in. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. Dawn came slow and cold. Sam had spent the night moving into position, finding the perfect spot where the rising sun would be directly behind him, turning him into a shadow while blinding anyone who looked his way. He'd checked his weapons 3 times, cleaned the Winchester's action, loaded every chamber of his Colt, steadied his breathing the way his sergeant had taught him before Shiloh. The first rays of sunlight crept over the eastern ridge like golden fingers reaching across the canyon floor. Sam settled the Winchester stock against his shoulder, sighted on the nearest sentry, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The sentry dropped without a sound. For one frozen heartbeat, the camp was silent. Then chaos erupted. Men scrambled for weapons for cover, shouting and cursing. The sun was in their eyes, blinding them, turning Sam into an invisible angel of death, raining fire from above. He worked the lever action, firing again and again. Each shot found a target. One raider spun and fell. Another clutched his stomach, screaming. From inside the cave came a sound that made Sam's heart surge with fierce pride. War cries. Apache war cries. Ayanna had done it. She burst from the cave mouth, leading a desperate charge of women armed with rock sticks and knives stolen from guards. They hit the raiders from behind, a fury of vengeance that turned confusion into catastrophe. Sam dropped 2 more men as they tried to rally. A third went down under a hail of stones thrown by freed captives who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The survivors broke and ran, all except one. Virgil Cass stood in the center of camp, a Colt revolver in one hand and a child clutched against his chest with the other. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, her face streaked with tears and absolute terror. "Brennan!" Cass's voice cut through the gunfire like a blade through flesh. "I know you're out there. Show yourself, or I paint the rocks with this brat's brains." The shooting stopped. Silence fell over the canyon like a shroud. Sam rose from his position, rifle lowered, and began walking down the slope toward the canyon floor. His boots crunched on loose stone. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to take the shot, but the child was too close, the angle too tight. He needed a miracle. Cass watched him come grinning like a wolf. Sam Brennan, the great Union scout, the man who's been hunting me for 3 years. He tightened his grip on the child, making her whimper. "You know what I remember most about your wife? The way she begged at the end. The way she called your name like you could actually save her." "Let the girl go." Sam's voice was flat, dead calm. "This is between us. Always has been." "No, this is me winning, like I always win." Cass pressed the pistol barrel against the child's temple. "Drop your weapons, all of them, or I swear to God." Sam's finger twitched near his holster. One wrong move and the child was dead. He needed something, anything. A stone flew from somewhere to his left. It struck Cass's gun hand with a sharp crack of bone-meeting rock. His grip faltered. The pistol wavered, pointing away from the child for just an instant. Sam drew and fired in one fluid motion. The bullet took Cass square in the chest center mass, punching through ribs and lung. The impact knocked him backward off his feet. The child screamed and ran stumbling toward the women who'd emerged from the cave. Sam walked toward where Cass lay bleeding in the dust. The gang leader was still alive, barely. Blood bubbled on his lips. His eyes, full of hatred and disbelief, tracked Sam's approach. "The ring," Sam said. "Give it to me." Cass laughed, a wet, gurgling sound that sprayed crimson mist. You think you've won. My brother Marcus will hunt you down. He'll make what I did look like mercy. I'll deal with Marcus when the time comes." Sam crouched beside the dying man and looked into his eyes. He wanted to see fear there, wanted to see the same terror Cass had inflicted on so many innocent people. But there was only hatred, pure and bottomless even now. "For my father at Antietam," Sam said quietly, "for Mary and Thomas at Miller Creek, for every soul you've destroyed." He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. Sam reached down and pulled the silver ring from Cass's lifeless finger. It was warm from the dead man's body heat, sticky with blood. He wiped it clean on his pants and held it up to the morning light. 3 generations of Brennan men had worn this ring. Now it was finally home. Sam stood alone over the body for a long moment. The morning sun warmed his face. Somewhere behind him, freed captives were crying and embracing, calling out the names of loved ones found alive against all odds. Children laughed through tears. Women held each other and wept. He slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly, just as it had fit his father's hand and his grandfather's before that. "It's done," he said quietly to no one and everyone at once. "Mary, Thomas, Pa, it's finally done." The wind carried his words away into the canyon, and Sam felt something loosen in his chest. A knot that had been pulled tight for 3 years, cutting off air, cutting off life, cutting off any possibility of peace. The knot was gone now. He could breathe again. Not healed. He would never be fully healed. Some wounds cut too deep for that, but the bleeding had finally stopped. He turned away from the dead and walked toward the living. 2 days later, they reached the edge of Apache territory. The freed captives would travel north with guides from Ayanna's tribe back to whatever homes and families they had left. Sam and Ayanna watched them go, standing side by side on a rocky outcrop as the morning mist burned away in the valleys below. "Your people need you," Sam said finally. "Yes, that elder was right. They're rebuilding. They need warriors, leaders. Ayanna turned to face him. The bruises on her face were fading, now replaced by something harder and sharper. A woman transformed by fire and blood, and the knowledge that she could face anything. What do you need? Sam thought about his cabin, the empty rooms, the silence that had been his only companion for 3 long years. He thought about Mary's grave on the hillside and the small wooden cross that marked where Thomas lay beside her. He'd spent 3 years chasing ghosts, living for nothing but revenge. Virgil Cass was dead now. The hunt was over. But standing here with this woman who'd fought beside him, who trusted him with her life, and proven herself his equal in every way that mattered, he didn't feel empty. He felt something he'd forgotten was possible. Purpose. I need someone who can watch my back, he said finally. Someone who shoots straight and doesn't talk too much. The Arizona territory is full of men like Cass. Someone's got to deal with them. Is that a job offer? Partners. 50-50. Whatever we earn, whatever we face, we split it down the middle. Not because you paid $2 for me. That was the worst investment I ever made. You've been nothing but trouble since the moment I cut that rope. A real smile crossed her face this time. Small but genuine. Then we have a deal. She extended her hand, not for a handshake. For a warrior's grip, forearm to forearm, Sam took it. Her grip was iron, same as his. Partners, she said. Partners. 1 month later, a rider approached the cabin at dusk. Sam watched from the porch, Winchester across his knees. Ayanna materialized from the shadows near the corral, her own rifle already leveled at the stranger. The rider stopped at the edge of the yard, hands raised high where they could be seen clearly. Easy now. I'm not looking for trouble. He was a weathered man in his 50s, wearing a deputy's star on his vest. Name's Tom Reeves. Federal Marshal's office sent me. What do you want? Sam asked. Reeves reached slowly into his coat, moving like a man who knew sudden gestures could get him killed. He produced a folded paper and tossed it onto the porch. Got a problem down in Silver Creek. Mining companies being hit by a gang we can't identify. 15 men dead in the last month. Payroll stolen 3 times. Witnesses keep disappearing. Sam unfolded the paper. A list of crimes, dates, locations. A description of the gang's tactics. And at the bottom, a fee that made his eyebrows rise. He showed it to Ayanna. She read it and nodded once. Tell the marshal we'll take the job, Sam said. Reeves let out a breath of relief. Good, because there's something else you should know. He shifted in his saddle, suddenly uncomfortable. The gang's leader. Some folks say he's former military, Confederate, and he's been asking around about you specifically, putting out word that he's looking for the man who murdered his brother. Sam's hand tightened on the rifle stock. Virgil Cass wasn't the only one in that family. He had a younger brother named Marcus. Meaner, smarter, more patient. Reeves looked between Sam and Ayanna, his face grim. From what I hear, he's sworn blood vengeance. Won't stop until you're dead. Sam and Ayanna exchanged a look. A whole conversation passed between them in a single glance. Watch your backs out there, Reeves said. He touched his hat brim and turned his horse toward the trail. As the hoofbeats faded into the distance, Ayanna checked her rifle. The same Winchester she'd taken from a dead raider in Red Canyon. Well, she said, at least we won't be bored. Sam rose from the porch, feeling the comfortable weight of the Colt on his hip and his father's ring on his finger. Pack light. We ride at first light. The story that started with $2 silver was far from over, but this time Sam Brennan wasn't hunting alone, and that made all the difference.